In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to play neo-soul guitar. If you're new to the genre and interested in playing the style, then this video is going to be perfect for you. Today, I'll be breaking down the chords, scales, and techniques that you need to know to master the genre, along with lots of musical examples to get you inspired. So what is neo-soul? Neo-soul is a really cool genre that blends together gospel, R&B, funk, jazz, hip-hop into a really awesome fusion and creates its own unique genre. Some guitarists that you might want to check out are Melanie Faye, Bo Diakovic, Ruben Wan, Kazuki Isogai, and Todd Pritchard. Let me know if I've forgotten your favorite guitarist in the comments. So the first element of neo-soul guitar is chords. Standard major and minor chords aren't really going to cut it here, so we're going to use some seventh chords. And we're going to be using shell voicings. So shell voicings are seventh chords where we've omitted the fifth. So we're just playing the root, third, and seventh. And we're going to be working in the key of A today. So let's take a look at all the shell voicings in the key of A. Now, as I said, we're going to be sticking to the key of A today, but if you want to change keys, all you've got to do is move all of these shapes up and down the fretboard. With the chords I've just shown you, we can come up with cool riffs and chord progressions that sound a bit like this. Now, a couple of important elements that went into creating that riff. So the first was syncopation. Now, neo-soul is all about groove, and syncopation is one of the best ways to create a groove. If we just play our chords on the beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's kind of boring, doesn't really excite the listener. To create the groove that we want, we have to kind of place emphasis on the weaker beats, and that gives the listener something they're not expecting. And another cool element I used in that chord progression was a little hammer-on on our major 7 chords. For example, D major 7, I hammered on the 6th fret of the G string from the 4th fret. That hammer-on is really commonly used in neo-soul guitar, so definitely start using it if you want to get that neo-soul sound. Now, of course, we can't just play chords all day, that's going to get boring. We have to add some single note lines and melodies to spice it up a little bit. The best scale to use for neo-soul, which is probably not going to come as a surprise to you, is the pentatonic scale. Now, we're playing in the key of A major, so we're going to use the A major pentatonic scale. So here are the 5 shapes of the A major pentatonic scale. And what we can do with the pentatonic scale is we can play some little melodies with the scale in between our chords in our chord progressions. You can create things that sound a little bit like this. There are other scales that work really well in neo-soul because, as I said, it's a genre heavily influenced by jazz, and in jazz we use lots of different scales. One particular scale that I really like to use is the altered scale. I'm not going to get too much into it in today's video as this is a beginner guide, but I have done a video on it if you want to go further with your scale knowledge. But the pentatonic scale is pretty much mostly what I use and mostly what you're going to use. The other advanced scales kind of really just spice things up a little bit. We're not going to be using them most of the time. Now, with what I've shown you so far in the video, you can create some really awesome neo-soul sounding riffs, but the really fruity sounds come from where we throw in the occasional non-diatonic chord. So when I say non-diatonic, I mean not in the key, so we're going to throw in some chords that are not in our key. There are many different ways to add non-diatonic chords to your chord progressions, but one of the best ways is modal interchange. This is where we borrow chords from a parallel mode or parallel key. A parallel mode is basically a mode that has the same root note. So for example, we're playing in the key of A major, but a parallel mode would be A Lydian or A Dorian or A Phrygian or A Locrian, because they all start with A. You can learn about modal interchange and lots of other ways to spice up your chord progressions in my book Chord Charisma 2.0. You can grab the first 2 chapters for free down below. I'll talk a bit more about that later, but let's continue with the lesson. Here are some of my favorite modal interchange chords. Now, why don't you take a listen to this awesome riff that I've created, which utilizes a lot of modal interchange chords. Another really awesome trick I like to use is the diminished chord. These work really well as passing chords. All you got to do is chuck them in 1 fret below whatever the next chord in your chord progression is. For example, if I was going to D major 7, 1 fret below D is C sharp, so I'd play a C sharp diminished or a C sharp diminished 7th chord before playing the D major 7. So here is an example that uses this diminished chord concept. Instead of using shell voicings now, I'm going to be using some bar chords as they work better with the diminished chords. Now, neo soul is all about feeling and all about vibe, and we can't play with feeling if we're just mindlessly playing notes. The guitar is a wonderful instrument. It allows us to express ourselves in many different ways, and we have to take full advantage of all the ways the guitar allows us to express ourselves to create the best feeling and the best vibe in neo soul. So I'm going to go into some really cool techniques you can start using to get that feeling into your playing. First up is slides. Slides are awesome for giving us that smooth, slippery sound that is so popular in neo soul guitar. We can apply it to both chords and single note lines. One thing I like to do with chords is I like to slide into my chords from the fret below. So something that sounds a little bit like this. You could also do a slide vibrato. That's where you slide up and down a fret really, really quickly to get a sort of vibrato kind of sound. You can do it once, you can do it twice, you can do it multiple times, but the main thing is that you're going back and forth very, very quickly. So take a listen to how it sounds. And of course, you don't just have to do it with chords, you can apply slide vibrato to your single note lines as well. So here's an example. So I'm going to combine slides into both my chord playing and my single note playing for the following example. So why don't you take a listen? Another cool way to add some groove into your playing is to play ghost notes. So whenever there's a bit of space, there's a gap in whatever you're playing, you can just play these muted, deadened strings to just fill up the space a little bit. It works really well, fills up the space, creates more groove in your playing, so you should definitely start doing it. So here's an example using some ghost notes, so you can kind of hear the effect that it has. Now, there isn't really a name for the next technique, but I'm just going to call it flourishes, okay? So this is where we play a chord, and while that chord is ringing out, we use spare fingers that are not playing the chord to kind of do some hammer-ons and pull-offs in other places. For example, we could use a D major 7 chord, and we could take our little finger and we can use it to hammer on and pull off the 7th fret of the high E, the B, and the G strings and get something that sounds a little bit like this. We could also do a very, very similar thing with an F sharp minor 7 chord. We could use our little finger to hammer on and pull off the 12th fret of the E, the 12th fret of the B, and the 11th fret of the G strings. So why don't you take a listen to a sort of more musical example using these flourishes with a couple of different chords. Now, I've saved my favorite technique for last. This is the chord quake. So the chord quake is a super awesome technique. What we're gonna do is we're gonna play the notes in the chord one at a time. When we play each note, we're gonna slide back a fret and then back up to the original position. Then the next note we play, we're gonna slide back a fret and back up to the original position. And we're gonna do this for every single note in the chord, while also maintaining and ringing out the sound of the rest of the chord. Okay, it's a little bit of a tricky exercise to get down, but it's so worth it because it sounds really, really cool. For example, this is how you would do it with a D major 9 chord. And this is how you would use it in a more musical context. The next thing you want to do, if you want to improve your neo soul playing, is start using some more interesting and complex chord voicings. As I said earlier in the video, neo soul is very much inspired by jazz, so you'll want to have a really good understanding of complex chords and harmony. My book, Chord Charisma 2.0, is the ultimate system for improving your chord game. There's no better resource online for guitarists who want to make awesome, modern, chordal guitar music. And I'm offering the first 2 chapters for free. Head down to the description where you can grab your copy of the first 2 chapters for free. In those first 2 chapters, I'm going to show you how to write a basic chord progression with the 7 chords in your key. So if you're not sure which order to put your chords in, this is going to solve that problem for you. And then I'm going to show you how to extend those chords with things like 9ths, 11ths, and 13ths to create that jazzy, sophisticated sound that is really, really, really characteristic of neo soul. And that's completely for free. It's really going to blow your mind. Okay, now with that being said, if you want to learn a bit more about neo soul guitar playing, you can check this video out here, and I'll see you there. Have a good one.